Hello and welcome to Talking Data. This is the first in a series of screencasts aimed at starting the conversation between you and data. The first step is getting data to talk back. Trust me, once data start talking, they won't stop. In this episode, I will describe a newly designed report that uses map data to tell you two things. First, in the top section of the report, here, the graphs tell you whether students in your school made benchmark, how they compare to the national norm, and whether they made norm growth or not. The bottom portion breaks the students into categories based on how much growth they need to achieve benchmark and how they performed in actually getting to benchmark. I'm going to explain in more detail how to read this report, starting with the top section. In the first graph, here, what is displayed is the proportion of students projected to score proficient on CSAP. In this case, you can see the numbers range from 63% to 34%. Projected CSAP proficiency is also referred to as benchmark. The benchmark is actually a RIT level. Students above that RIT level are projected proficient, and students below that RIT level are considered not proficient. Now this report here is based on spring, so we were projecting how the students were doing in the spring of 2008. In graph 2, we are comparing the students to the national norm. The percent of students scoring above the 50th percentile is displayed. The first bar tells me that 36% of the students in grade 3 at this school scored above the national norm in the spring test. That's this number right here. A normal school nationwide would have about 50% of the students scoring above the national norm and about 50% below the national norm. The last graph, Graph 3, tells me the percent of students that made norm growth. Norm growth is based on an individual student's starting point and is fall to spring growth. The first bar tells me that 65% of the students made norm growth in 3rd grade at this school. That means, based on where they started, 65% of the students in grade 3 did about what they'd expected to do under normal conditions. I think that expecting 75% or more of the students to make norm growth is not unreasonable. The lower portion of the report shows me how much growth is needed and the proportion of students that achieved it. In the first graph, on the lower part, you are shown the proportion of students who need to achieve their norm growth or less to make benchmark from fall to spring. In other words, this is the group of students that if everything goes normally for them, they will achieve benchmark by the spring. Some of these students are already above benchmark, some are only slightly below it, and some are about norm growth below it. In short, these are the students that came in on grade level, and if they make typical growth, they should also leave on grade level, is what this graph is saying. The second graph is the percent of students that need up to 2 times norm growth. The third graph is the percent that need 2 to 3 times norm growth, and the fourth graph is the students that need 3 or more times normal growth. Time to do a little math. If you add up the percent in each of the 4 first bars, you'll get 100%. I guarantee it. Go ahead and try. No, really, go ahead and try it. I'll wait. Below each graph is the proportion of students that achieved benchmark. So here's the kicker. So, below graph number 1, it tells me that of these 54.2% of students who came in on benchmark or only needed normal growth to meet benchmark, of these 54%, 89.7% of them actually achieved benchmark by the spring. So, in the second graph, what I know is that you can see on the bottom, 32.1% of these students that needed 1 to 2 times norm growth made benchmark, and so on. Now it's time for you to check your data out and see how you think your school did this year.